You ever pay good money to get something fixed? Wait 3 weeks, finally get it back, and somehow it comes home with the same problem, a new problem, and your blood pressure somewhere between annoyed dad and Old Testament prophet. Well, this week, that was me. You see, my John Deere Gator went in for what it looked like just a regular water coolant problem. Water pump, we think, went. And 3 weeks later, this week, I got it back and paid the bill and thought, great, we're back in business. Can go around the property and start doing the stuff I have to do. No. When we got it back, we noticed that the mud flap was ripped. The coolant system, turns out, still had issues. The unit overheated, then it stalled right in the middle of the trail. We had to tow it back to the house with the tractor like the saddest little farm parade you've ever seen. And at that moment, I really wanted to call the mechanic and let him know exactly how many fruits of the Spirit I was no longer experiencing. But instead, I took the time on the tractor ride, I slowed down, and that's what we're talking about today. Being slow to anger, but quick to forgive. Hey guys, welcome to God, Guns, and Diapers. This is a place where I talk about faith, firearms, and fatherhood, because all three matter right now more than anything. And if you're trying to be a better man, a better protector, and a better dad, you're in the right place. And hopefully we'll learn something together. So let's get right into it. So James chapter 1 verse 19 says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And that's wonderful when everything is going right and life is calm. It sounds a little bit more offensive when the gator's being, steaming and your wallet's lighter and you're towing it behind the tractor, questioning everything you've done up to that moment. But that's exactly when that scripture matters. Nobody needs slow to anger when the kids are behaving, the coffee is hot, the house is clean, and everything starts on the first try. You need slow to anger when the thing you paid to fix is still broken. You need it when you feel disrespected. You need it when your first instinct is to grab the phone, raise your voice, channel your inner Karen, and start a conversation that you'll probably regret by dinner. And I'll be honest, I was mad. I was upset. I was not slightly disappointed mad. I'm about to leave a voicemail that might get played back in court mad. But here's the truth. Anger itself is not always the sin. Something should bother us. Bad work should bother us. Wasted money should bother us. Being brushed off should bother us. But anger becomes dangerous when it takes control. Anger is like a bad trigger pull. It's rushed, it's jerky, it's emotional, and in the end it pulls everything off target. Now let's put this on target. I've got a couple of steel targets downrange and I'm going to take a few shots. But the point here is not about speed, it's about control. Because one of the easiest mistakes you can make when shooting is rushing the trigger pull. When you get the sights where you want them and you get excited, and instead of pressing the trigger smoothly, you end up slapping it. And when you do that, when you slap the trigger, you usually pull your shot off the target. That little bit of patience or impatience shows up downrange every single time. A good trigger press is steady, controlled, intentional. You don't panic the shot into the target. You press it with purpose. And men, that's the picture of anger. When life puts pressure on us, we want to slap the trigger emotionally. We want to respond right now. We want to say the thing. We want to send the text, write the email, make the call, raise our voice, win the argument. But rushing reactions rarely land where the righteousness is aimed. And when I slow down the trigger, I shoot better. When I slow down the anger, I lead better. It's the same principle, different target. So when the gator overheated and stalled again, I had a choice. I could call the mechanic and immediately start voicing my opinions and become a one-man customer service incident. Or I could pause, and I knew if I called right then, I wasn't going to be calling to solve the problem. I was calling to unload. There's a big difference. So instead of grabbing the phone, I did something very tactical. I had lunch. So that's right, conflict resolution in the advanced setting. I had a sandwich with my kids and my dad that was visiting, and then I handled the confrontation. So sandwich first, confrontation second. Let the first wave of being upset pass, and that pause mattered, because later when I went to the mechanic in person, I was still frustrated, I was still upset, but I wasn't out of control. I could explain what happened, I could point out the damaged mud flap, I could talk through the coolant issue, I could say, hey, we brought this in, it isn't fixed, we need to figure out what happened. We don't need to be blaming anybody, we just need to get it resolved. But I could do it without acting like a fool. So from what I can tell, the mechanic and the manager, they heard me, and hopefully they're going to make it right. But now here's the thing. Being slow to anger does not mean pretending everything is fine. It doesn't mean being passive. It's not letting someone else, walk all over me. It's meaning I chose the right time, the right tone, and the right approach. It's not a weakness. It's control. That being said, speed is not bad. In shooting, speed matters. But speed without control is just missing faster. The same thing is in life. A quick response is not always the wise response. Sometimes we think, I need to deal with this right now. And what we really mean is, I want relief from this anger right now. That's dangerous, because the first version of you that shows up in anger is not always the best version of you. So the skill to practice this week is simple. Don't rush the trigger pull. Don't rush the response. On the range, that means slow, steady pressure. In life, that means take a breath before you speak. On the range, that means don't jerk the shot. In life, that means don't jerk the conversation sideways because your pride got touched. On the range, that means focus on the target. In life, that means focus on the goal. And the goal is not always winning the argument. The goal is acting in a way that honors God. Now, I also want to include this. Slow to anger, but quick to forgive, because sometimes we think forgiveness means, the issue disappears. It doesn't. Forgiveness doesn't mean that the gator was magically fixed or that the bill didn't hurt paying it. It doesn't mean that the mud flap suddenly reattached itself through Christian optimism. Forgiveness means I'm not going to let the bitterness run my heart. It means I can pursue accountability without revenge. It means I can direct the conversation without hatred. It means I can expect someone to make it right without actually hoping they step on a Lego brick barefoot for the next 6 months. But that's hard. And Christ forgave me and you for a lot more than a bad repair job. So if I'm going to claim his name, I need to reflect that character and his character, especially when I'm frustrated. So here's where fatherhood comes in. Your kids are watching you pull the trigger. Not literally, but they are watching how quickly you fire off your words. They're watching how you handle inconveniences. They're watching whether or not dad becomes somebody scary when something is wrong. My kids may not understand water cooling systems or water pumps, repair times, or why dad is towing the gator home like it lost a bar fight. But they understand my tone. They understand facial expressions. They understand when dad is angry and upset. And more importantly, they learn what dad does with that anger and what that anger is allowed to do. So if my kid sees me explode every single time something goes wrong, I'm training them. I may not mean to, but I am. I'm teaching them that frustration equals permission. Permission to yell, permission to insult, permission to lose control. But if they see me get angry and pause, pray with them, eat lunch, joke around, think about it, and then go have a firm but respectful conversation, I'm teaching them to go in a different direction. I'm teaching them that self-control is a strength, that forgiveness is not a weakness, and then I'm teaching them that you can be firm without being cruel. And that matters because, one day they're going to have their own Gator moment. Maybe it's, the Gator, maybe it's a car repair, maybe it's a broken appliance, maybe it's a dog acting up, but maybe it's also their boss, a friend, a spouse, or one of their own kids pushing every button that they have. And in that moment, I want them to remember what Dad did. And I want them to remember more than just the Bible verse. Dad handled it when the pressure was on. Now look, I'm not saying every shot today was perfect. That's actually part of the point. Training reveals what still needs work, and life does the same thing. The Gator didn't create the anger in me, it revealed it. The repair issue didn't create impatience, it exposed it. And the same way that a target shows what I'm doing with my trigger press, pressure shows what's happening in the heart. So, when you see something off target, don't just get embarrassed. You train for it, you bring it to God, you practice the discipline, you get better. So here's this week's challenge. Before you slap the trigger, slow down. Don't make the phone call, shoot off the text, or write that spicy email. There you go, guys. That's going to melt steel beams. Take a breath, pray, and ask yourself, what are you trying to accomplish? Am I trying to get something fixed, or am I trying to make somebody else feel my anger? Be slow to anger, be quick to listen, and be careful with your words. And always be quick to forgive. Here comes another dog. Because as men, we're called to protect. Sometimes that's from danger, sometimes that's from fear, but that also means sometimes we're protecting our family from our own worst version of ourselves. So that's faith, that's firearms, and that's fatherhood. So keep training, and God bless.